Ethan Calloway loosened his tie as he stepped into the dimly lit master bedroom. The penthouse was silent, the only sound the distant hum of the city below. He had come home earlier than expected, but the house felt off. He glanced around, his gaze landing on Scarlett's vanity table. Everything was perfectly arranged, except for the single drawer that was slightly ajar. His brows furrowed as he stepped closer. He had never been the type to invade privacy, but something about that drawer being open made his instincts flare. Inside, beneath a layer of silk scarves and perfume bottles, was a small leather-bound diary. Locked. His pulse ticked up. Scarlett never mentioned keeping a diary. He turned it over in his hands, running his thumb over the lock. He should put it back. Walk away. But then, his gaze landed on a tiny silver key on the table. His fingers closed around it before he could stop himself. A second later, the lock clicked open. The pages smelled of ink and jasmine, her signature perfume. His breath hitched as he read the first line. Ethan, I never loved you. This was all a lie. His blood ran cold. The diary slipped from his fingers, landing on the floor with a soft thud. Everything he thought he knew about his wife, it had just shattered. Ethan's breath was uneven as he stared at the diary lying open on the floor. A lie. The words blurred before his eyes, but their meaning burned into his mind. Scarlett, the woman he had married, the woman who had wrapped herself in his world so perfectly, had written this with her own hands. His fingers clenched into fists. He had always prided himself on being in control, on knowing everything before anyone else did. But now, he had been blindsided. His pulse pounded as he bent down, picking up the diary with shaking hands. He flipped through the pages, faster now, his heart hammering against his ribs. The more he read, the worse it got. I was never supposed to stay this long. I should have left before he got too close. But it's too late now. Too late for what? A door creaked somewhere in the penthouse. Ethan froze. Scarlett was home. He closed the diary with a soft snap, slipping it back into the drawer just as the sound of heels clicking against marble filled the hallway. He turned, just as she stepped into the bedroom. Scarlett smiled, her dark eyes warm as she pulled off her earrings, like she hadn't just destroyed his world. "You're home early," she said, crossing the room. Ethan forced his face into neutrality, his pulse still roaring in his ears. She couldn't know. Not yet. "I had a meeting canceled," he said smoothly, watching her every move. "Figured I'd spend the night with my wife." Scarlett smirked, stepping closer. "That doesn't sound like you." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to relax. The game had changed. And now, he had to figure out exactly who Scarlett Calloway really was. Ethan forced himself to move, to breathe, to act normal, even though his entire world had just shifted beneath his feet. Scarlett stepped closer, her perfume wrapping around him, her hands brushing against his tie as she loosened it with practiced ease. "You're tense," she murmured, her fingers grazing his collar. His jaw clenched. Tense? He was barely holding himself together. She tilted her head, studying him like she always did, as if she could see straight through him. Ethan had always known how to read people, how to uncover secrets before they became weapons against him. But he had never seen this coming. His hand came up, wrapping around her wrist gently. Not possessive, not rough, but firm. "Long day," he murmured, his voice steady. Scarlett exhaled a soft laugh, stepping back. "Well, maybe I can help with that." She turned toward the closet, unzipping her dress in a smooth motion as she disappeared behind the door. Ethan exhaled sharply, his mind racing. He had two choices: confront her now and risk her shutting down completely, or play the long game. He turned back to the drawer, his gaze flickering to the locked diary once more. He needed more information. He needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal ran. For now, he would play along. But Scarlett Calloway had just made the biggest mistake of her life. And Ethan? He was about to show her exactly what happened to people who lied to him. Ethan lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as Scarlett slept beside him, her breathing slow and steady. He should have felt something: anger, betrayal, the burning urge to wake her up and demand the truth. But instead, he felt cold, calculated, focused. Scarlett shifted slightly, the silk sheets rustling against her skin. She looked peaceful, like she wasn't hiding a secret that could burn their entire marriage to the ground. Ethan turned his head, watching her in the dim light. How long had she been lying to him? The diary had given him glimpses, enough to know she wasn't the woman he thought she was, but not enough to know why. His jaw tightened. He needed more. Slowly, carefully, he slipped out of bed, moving with the kind of precision that had made him a king in the business world. Scarlett didn't stir. He grabbed his phone and padded into his office, shutting the door behind him before dialing a number. A few rings, then a voice. "Mr. Calloway." The man on the other end greeted. "Didn't expect a call this late." "I need information," Ethan said, lowering himself into his leather chair. "Now." A pause. "On who?" Ethan glanced toward the door, making sure Scarlett hadn't woken up. "Scarlett Calloway, everything. Where she's been, who she's met, any ties she has to—" He hesitated, then said the name that had burned itself into his mind. "Lucienne Devereaux." Another pause, this time longer. Finally, the voice on the other end spoke, lower now. "Are you sure you want to open that door?" Ethan's grip tightened around his phone. A warning, a red flag. But it was too late for that. The door had already been opened. "I don't pay you for hesitation," he said coldly. "Find out what she's hiding, and do it fast." A quiet chuckle. "Understood. I'll have something by tomorrow." Ethan ended the call, setting the phone down with a sharp exhale. Tomorrow, he would know the truth. And if Scarlett really had been playing him this whole time, then she had no idea what kind of monster she had just woken up. Ethan sat in his office, his fingers drumming against the dark oak desk. He had been waiting for this call. The sun had barely risen, but his mind had been awake all night, piecing together every moment that suddenly made no sense. Scarlett's secret phone calls, the way she disappeared for hours with weak excuses, the hesitation in her eyes when she said she loved him. The phone vibrated against the desk. He grabbed it immediately. A familiar voice greeted him. "You're not going to like this." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. "Tell me." A pause, then— "Scarlett wasn't always Scarlett," the investigator said. "She changed her name 2 years before she met you. Her real name is Juliette Moreau." Ethan's fingers stilled. The name meant nothing to him. "Go on," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "She was connected to Lucienne Devereaux," the man continued. "Not romantically, but professionally." Ethan's pulse spiked. Professional how? "She worked for him. In what capacity, I'm still figuring out. But here's where it gets worse." A pause. "Your wife, she wasn't just some struggling artist before she met you. She was trained." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Trained for what?" Another hesitation. "For infiltration." Surveillance. Deception. A cold weight settled in Ethan's chest. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that my wife was trained to lie?" "Not just trained," the investigator corrected. "She was one of the best." Silence stretched between them. Ethan's grip tightened around the phone. The Scarlett he knew, the woman he married, had never existed. A carefully built illusion. A lie woven so flawlessly that he never saw the strings. "Find out everything," Ethan ordered, his voice sharp. "Every mission, every job, every connection to Lucienne." "Already working on it," the investigator assured him. Ethan ended the call, exhaling slowly. Scarlett Moreau, Juliette Moreau, whoever the hell she really was. He had given her his world, his name, his trust, and she had played him. His eyes flickered toward the bedroom door. Scarlett was still asleep, wrapped in his sheets like she belonged there. She didn't know he was onto her. Not yet. But when she woke up, the game would begin. Ethan stepped into the bedroom, his movements slow, deliberate. Scarlett was still asleep, curled into the silk sheets, looking every bit like the perfect wife she had pretended to be. His jaw clenched. How long had she been lying to him? The woman in his bed wasn't just Scarlett Calloway. She was Juliette Moreau, a ghost, a fabrication, a lie that had wrapped itself around his life so tightly that he hadn't even seen it coming. And now he had to play the long game. She stirred slightly, her lashes fluttering as she woke. Her eyes found his, a slow, sleepy smile curving her lips, fake. "Morning," she murmured, stretching. Ethan forced his expression into something neutral, something she wouldn't see through. "Morning," he echoed. Scarlett sat up, tucking her hair behind her ear, oblivious to the war raging inside his mind. "You're up early." Ethan smirked, stepping closer. "Couldn't sleep." Her gaze softened. "Thinking about work again?" Work, if only she knew. He sat at the edge of the bed, watching her. "Something like that." Scarlett reached for him, running her fingers along his forearm. "You need to relax." His pulse spiked, not from her touch, but from the realization that she had probably done this before. To someone else. For someone else. He exhaled, his mask firmly in place. "I was thinking," he said smoothly, "we should take a trip." Scarlett blinked, caught off guard. "A trip?" Ethan nodded. "Somewhere quiet. Just us." She hesitated for just a second too long. Then she smiled. "That sounds nice." Liar. Ethan leaned in, brushing his lips against her temple, ignoring the ice in his veins. She thought she was still in control. She thought he was still blind. But the game had changed. And this time, Ethan Calloway wasn't the one being played. Ethan watched Scarlett move through their penthouse, her movements smooth, practiced, just like everything else about her. She thought she had him fooled. She thought he was still the oblivious husband, the man who kissed her goodnight and never questioned what was lurking beneath the surface. But he knew the truth now. And every smile she gave him, every affectionate glance, felt like a carefully placed dagger. She was planning something. The hesitation in her voice when he mentioned the trip, the way her fingers tensed around her coffee mug when he kissed her neck this morning. She was hiding something new. Ethan leaned against the marble counter, sipping his whiskey as she stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the city. "How long would we be gone?" she asked, her tone light. Too light. Ethan smirked, taking another sip. "A week, maybe more." She turned to him, tilting her head slightly. "You? Taking time off?" He chuckled. Let her believe she had the upper hand. "You're right. he mused, setting his glass down. It's rare, but I thought you'd appreciate the effort. Scarlett's lips curved, but it didn't reach her eyes, because she was calculating. A week away from here meant she couldn't run. She couldn't make calls. She was trapped. Ethan exhaled, stepping toward her, watching the way her pulse flickered in her throat. Nervous. Good. He brushed his fingers along her wrist, feeling the warmth of her skin, the steady beat of her pulse beneath his fingertips. I just want us to spend time together, he murmured. Scarlett nodded, her lashes lowering slightly. Of course. Just us. Liar. Ethan smiled, slow and easy, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. She didn't know it yet, but she was already caught. This wasn't a vacation. It was a hunt, and Scarlett Moreau had just become his prey. Ethan watched Scarlett as she packed her suitcase, carefully folding each piece of clothing like she wasn't planning to leave him the moment she got the chance. He leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, his smirk barely concealed. She thought she was in control. She thought he didn't see through her. How long are we staying? She asked casually, placing a silk dress into her bag. Ethan tilted his head. Why? Nervous? Scarlett chuckled, shaking her head. Just curious. I need to know what to pack. Liar. Ethan stepped closer, trailing his fingers along the sleek handle of her suitcase. Pack light. I'll take care of everything else. She glanced up at him, searching his face for something. Doubt, hesitation, weakness. She wouldn't find any. Scarlett forced a smile, zipping up the bag. Then I guess I'm ready. Ethan smirked. Not yet, you aren't. The jet was waiting, fully fueled, ready to take them far away from prying eyes. Somewhere private. Somewhere she wouldn't have an escape. Scarlett didn't know it yet. But by the time this trip was over, there wouldn't be any more lies left between them. She had spent months deceiving him. Now? It was his turn. The private jet cut through the sky, slicing the clouds with effortless precision. Inside, the cabin was quiet. Too quiet. Ethan sat across from Scarlett, watching her as she sipped her champagne, her fingers wrapped delicately around the crystal glass. She was playing her role well. Too well. You seem tense, she said, her voice smooth, testing, probing. Ethan smirked, swirling the whiskey in his glass. Long week. Scarlett nodded, but her eyes studied him carefully. She could feel it, the shift in his demeanor. The game had changed, and she knew it. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Tell me something. Scarlett lifted a brow. Anything. A challenge. Ethan tilted his head slightly. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would it be? Scarlett hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. She was thinking too carefully, calculating. A normal person would have answered instantly. Ethan smirked. Gotcha. Finally, she smiled. Paris. Liar. Ethan exhaled, leaning back into his seat. Paris, huh? Scarlett nodded, sipping her drink. The city of love. Ethan's gaze darkened. Is that what you're after, Scarlett? Love? Her smile didn't falter, but her fingers tightened around the glass. She wasn't expecting the question. I have everything I need right here, she murmured. And yet, she wasn't convincing. Ethan's smirk returned, slow and knowing. She was trapped now. The plane touched down minutes later. Scarlett glanced out the window, her expression shifting slightly when she realized where they were. Not Paris, not an exotic island, a private villa in the middle of nowhere. No cameras, no press, no distractions, no escape. Ethan stood, buttoning his jacket as he looked down at her. "Welcome home, Scarlett." Her smile faltered, just for a second, and Ethan knew she had finally realized she was caught. Scarlett stepped out of the jet, the cool evening air wrapping around her like a silent warning. The villa stood against the horizon, isolated, surrounded by nothing but endless stretches of land and water. She hesitated, just for a second. Ethan noticed. His smirk was lazy, effortless, but his eyes, calculating. "Not what you expected?" he asked, stepping beside her. Scarlett recovered quickly, forcing a soft smile. "It's beautiful." Another lie. Ethan took her hand, his grip firm as he led her toward the waiting car. She couldn't run now. The ride to the villa was silent, thick with unspoken words. Scarlett's fingers drummed lightly against her thigh, a habit he had never paid attention to before. Now? He analyzed everything. She was thinking, planning. Good. Let her think she still had a way out. Let her believe she was still playing the game. The car pulled up to the villa, the towering structure looming over them. No staff. No distractions. Just them. Scarlett stepped out first, glancing around, her expression unreadable. Ethan watched her closely. She was scanning, calculating exits. "Relax," he murmured, stepping behind her. "You're safe here." Scarlett turned, her smile soft, but her eyes sharp. "Of course I am." Liar. Inside, the villa was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek modern decor, the scent of aged wood and expensive leather filling the space. Scarlett walked slowly through the grand living room, her fingertips trailing along the back of the velvet couch. A distraction. Ethan let her play her part. "Dinner?" he asked, his voice smooth. Scarlett turned, her expression carefully neutral. "Sounds perfect." She was stalling. Ethan smirked. "Then let's celebrate." He poured 2 glasses of wine, handing one to her. She accepted it easily, but her grip was just a little too controlled. Ethan leaned against the bar, watching her, waiting. "Tell me something," he said casually. "What's the biggest lie you've ever told?" Scarlett's fingers tightened around the glass. A flicker of something flashed across her face before she covered it with a soft laugh. "That's a dangerous question, Mr. Calloway." Ethan's smirk deepened. Not a single word she said tonight had been the truth, and by the time this trip was over, she wouldn't have any lies left to tell. Scarlett lifted the wine glass to her lips, but Ethan noticed she didn't drink. Instead, she let the deep red liquid swirl, her gaze flickering over the rim, studying him just as much as he was studying her. He smirked. She was careful, always careful, but not careful enough. Ethan took a slow sip of his own drink, stepping closer. "So?" Scarlett blinked. "So what?" "The biggest lie you've ever told," he reminded her, voice smooth, controlled. Scarlett exhaled, setting her glass down. "Isn't that obvious?" She tilted her head slightly. "I told you I'd love you forever." A direct hit, a calculated move. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't react. Not yet. He chuckled, stepping even closer. "You're good, Scarlett. I'll give you that." Scarlett's expression didn't change, but her pulse flickered at her throat. He saw it. Good. Ethan reached forward, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch slow, measured. "You think you can manipulate me?" he murmured. "You think I haven't figured you out?" Scarlett held his gaze. "Have you?" Ethan smirked. "I know exactly what you are." She inhaled softly, but she didn't move. "And what's that?" Ethan leaned in, his lips just inches from her ear. "A liar." Scarlett tensed. Ethan pulled back just slightly, watching the mask she had so carefully built begin to crack. "You weren't supposed to fall for me, were you?" he asked quietly. "That wasn't part of the job." Scarlett's lips parted, but no words came out. Ethan tilted his head. "But you did, didn't you?" Scarlett exhaled sharply, her fingers tightening at her sides. "What are you doing?" Ethan smirked, stepping back just enough to give her space, just enough to make her feel like she had control. "We have all week, Scarlett," he said smoothly. "Let's see how long you can keep up this act." Scarlett's jaw tightened. She was cornered, and she knew it. But Ethan? He wasn't done yet. Scarlett inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Ethan was watching her, not like a husband admiring his wife, but like a predator toying with its prey. He knew, or at least he knew enough. But he wanted more. Scarlett tilted her chin up, masking her nerves with a soft smirk. If he was playing a game, she could play too. She stepped forward, closing the space between them. "You seem so sure of yourself, Ethan." He didn't move, but his smirk remained. "I always am." Scarlett trailed a finger along the collar of his shirt. "Then why are we here?" Ethan exhaled, amusement flickering in his gaze. "To spend time together. Isn't that what couples do?" Scarlett narrowed her eyes. Every word from his lips was laced with something deeper. Control. Power. And the silent promise that she wasn't leaving this place until he got what he wanted. She forced a soft laugh. "A week away from the city. Just us. Romantic, isn't it?" Ethan reached for her waist, pulling her just a little closer. Too close. "That depends." "On what?" she murmured. Ethan's smirk deepened. "On whether or not you tell me the truth." Scarlett's breath hitched. There it was. The trap. She masked it quickly, forcing herself to relax in his grip. "The truth about what?" Ethan exhaled, dragging his thumb slowly along her hip. "Who you really are." Silence stretched between them. Scarlett's pulse pounded in her ears. She could lie. She could run. Or she could play this game until she found a way out. Scarlett swallowed hard, then smiled sweetly, leaning in just enough to let her lips brush against his jaw. "You already know who I am, Ethan," she whispered. "I'm your wife." Ethan exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "Not for much longer." Scarlett tensed. He pulled back, his smirk razor sharp. He wasn't just testing her anymore. He was waiting for her to break. Scarlett forced a breath, steadying herself. Not yet. If Ethan wanted to play this game, fine. But he wasn't the only one who knew how to lie. Scarlett sat at the edge of the villa's infinity pool, her bare feet dipped into the cool water, her mind spinning. Ethan was testing her, watching her every move. She had spent years perfecting her act, slipping into roles effortlessly. But this was different, because this time, he wasn't the fool. She heard his footsteps before she saw him. Slow, measured. He stopped just behind her, his presence towering over her, shadowing her in a way that felt far too intentional. "Beautiful night," he murmured. Scarlett smiled, keeping her voice light. "It is." Ethan stepped closer. "You've been quiet." She let out a soft chuckle. "Just enjoying the peace." Ethan hummed, tilting his head. "Or trying to figure out how to escape." Scarlett stilled. It was subtle, but Ethan caught it. A slight stiffening of her shoulders. A flicker of something in her eyes before she masked it. She turned slowly, looking up at him. "Why would I need to escape, Ethan?" His smirk was slow, deliberate. "Because you know I'm not letting you go until I get the truth." Scarlett's pulse spiked. He crouched down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body, close enough that his voice dropped to something only she could hear. "You lied to me," he murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "For months, you built an entire life out of deception. And now, you're trapped in your own web." Scarlett swallowed hard, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "And what happens when you get your truth, Ethan?" Ethan smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then you'll finally understand what it feels like to be played." Scarlett inhaled, steadying herself. He thought he was in control. But the thing about being trained in deception? You always knew how to play the game better. She leaned in slightly, just enough to let her lips graze the corner of his jaw, just enough to let him feel the heat of her breath. "Then I guess we'll see who wins," she whispered. Ethan's smirk deepened, but his grip on her wrist tightened. Scarlett exhaled slowly, ignoring the way her heart pounded. This wasn't just about the truth anymore. This was about survival. Scarlett stood in front of the bedroom mirror, her fingers tracing the delicate chain around her neck. The same necklace Ethan had given her on their anniversary. A symbol of love, a symbol of devotion. Now, a collar. She inhaled deeply, schooling her expression as she caught Ethan's reflection behind her. Watching. Always watching. He leaned against the doorframe, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up. Casual, relaxed, a man who had already won. Scarlett turned, her smile practiced. "You've been staring." Ethan smirked. "Can you blame me?" Scarlett's pulse flickered. Every move he made now was calculated. He pushed off the doorframe, closing the space between them. Not in a rush. Not a threat. Just inevitable. Scarlett stood her ground as he reached for her necklace, his fingers grazing her collarbone. "You wear this every day," he murmured, his thumb tracing the pendant. "Why?" Scarlett inhaled. "Because I love it." Ethan tilted his head, his smirk deepening. "Liar." Her stomach twisted. He let the necklace fall, his hands moving to her waist instead, pulling her closer. Too close. His voice was softer now, but there was something sharp beneath it. "Tell me, Scarlett, when did it stop?" She frowned slightly. When did what stop? His grip on her waist tightened. "The act." Scarlett's breath caught. Ethan exhaled, shaking his head slightly. "You spent months lying to me. Every kiss, every "I love you," fake. I just want to know when you started believing it yourself." Her pulse pounded. Ethan was testing her again, waiting for her to crack. Scarlett lifted her gaze, keeping her voice steady. "You think I fell in love with you?" Ethan smirked, brushing his lips against her temple. A whisper of a touch. A warning. "I think you don't know anymore," he murmured. Scarlett's stomach twisted, because for the first time, she wasn't sure if he was wrong. Scarlett lay awake in the massive bed, her body still, but her mind racing. Ethan's words echoed in her head. "I think you don't know anymore." She had spent years perfecting her lies, slipping into roles, becoming whoever she needed to be to survive. But Ethan wasn't just testing her now. He was pulling at the seams of her carefully constructed world. She turned her head slightly. Ethan lay beside her, his breathing steady, his features relaxed in the dim light. But she wasn't fooled. He wasn't sleeping. Scarlett exhaled softly, shifting onto her side, facing him. "You're awake." Ethan's smirk was slow, eyes still closed. "So are you." Scarlett swallowed. "Can't sleep." Ethan finally opened his eyes, studying her in the dark. Thinking about running? She forced a quiet chuckle. Would it work if I did? Ethan didn't blink. No. Scarlett's stomach twisted. Silence stretched between them, thick with something neither of them wanted to name. Finally, Ethan exhaled, shifting onto his back, one arm resting beneath his head. You used to watch me sleep. Scarlett stilled. His voice was softer now, lacking its usual sharp edges. A trap or something real? I did not, she said lightly. Ethan turned his head slightly, smirking. Liar. Scarlett clenched her jaw. That word was starting to feel too personal. Ethan watched her closely, his voice dropping lower. Tell me something, Scarlett, she inhaled slowly. What? His gaze darkened. If I had never found that diary, how long were you planning to keep up this lie? Scarlett's breath hitched. He was waiting for her to break. She swallowed, forcing herself to meet his gaze. I don't know. Ethan studied her for a long moment, then smirked. At least you didn't lie this time. Scarlett exhaled, turning onto her back, staring at the ceiling. She wasn't sure if she was winning this game anymore. Or worse, if she even wanted to. The morning sun spilled through the sheer curtains, casting golden streaks across the villa's sleek marble floors. Scarlett sat on the balcony, legs curled beneath her, fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee she wasn't drinking. She hadn't slept. Ethan had stayed close all night, his breathing steady, his presence heavy beside her. He was waiting, watching, calculating. Now he stood by the railing, shirt unbuttoned at the top, coffee in hand, looking out over the ocean like he owned the world. Because in his mind, he did. Scarlett exhaled. What's the plan today? Ethan smirked, taking a slow sip before glancing at her. In a rush to leave? She forced a small smile. I'd just like to know if I should be expecting another interrogation. Ethan chuckled, low, dark, amused. Would you rather I stop asking questions? Scarlett's stomach twisted. She knew what he was doing, keeping her on edge, making her second-guess herself. She set her coffee down, meeting his gaze. I just think it's funny. Ethan raised a brow. What is? Scarlett tilted her head. You keep pushing for the truth, but I don't think you even know what you want anymore. Ethan studied her, smirk fading just slightly, a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. You think I'm confused? Scarlett shrugged. I think you're angry and hurt, but mostly, I think you don't know if you hate me or if you still want me. Silence. Ethan exhaled, setting his cup down beside hers, then leaned forward, too close. His fingers brushed against her chin, tilting her face up slightly. His touch was light, almost absent-minded, but she felt it everywhere. Scarlett swallowed. Ethan smirked. Maybe I want both. Her breath hitched, because for the first time, she believed him. And that terrified her. Scarlett's pulse quickened, but she didn't move. Ethan's fingers lingered under her chin, his touch light, teasing, but there was something darker beneath it, something dangerous. He wasn't just playing with her. He was daring her. Scarlett exhaled slowly, forcing herself to smirk. Both, huh? Ethan chuckled, but his eyes didn't waver. Why not? Scarlett tilted her head, letting his fingers graze her skin as she leaned in just slightly. Not enough to give in, but enough to test him back. Because, she murmured, you don't mix love and war, Ethan. Ethan smirked. Says the woman who turned our marriage into a battlefield. Scarlett's stomach tightened, but she didn't break eye contact. She wouldn't let him win. Instead, she reached up, tracing her fingers along the collar of his open shirt. A challenge. "If you hate me so much," she whispered, "why haven't you let me go?" Ethan exhaled slowly, his smirk faltering for just a second, a tiny crack in his armor. And then he did something unexpected. His fingers slid lower, grazing the side of her throat, his touch feather-light but heavy with intent. "Because," he murmured, "I want to watch you break first." Scarlett's breath hitched. This wasn't a game anymore. This was something else. Something twisted, addictive, destructive. Scarlett swallowed hard, her fingers tightening against his shirt. She should have pushed him away. She should have laughed, rolled her eyes, walked away. But instead, she leaned in closer. Because the worst part? She wasn't sure who was breaking first anymore. Scarlett's heartbeat pounded in her ears, drowning out the sound of the waves crashing against the cliffs below. Ethan's fingers barely touched her, but it didn't matter. The weight of his gaze, the tension thickening the air between them, it was suffocating, addictive, dangerous. Scarlett wet her lips, tilting her chin up slightly. "And what if I don't break, Ethan?" His smirk was slow, deliberate. "You will." Scarlett exhaled, fingers curling into his shirt, as if steadying herself. She should have stepped back, but she didn't. Ethan leaned in, his breath warm against her cheek. "You've spent so much time playing the perfect wife," he murmured. "Now tell me, who are you when you're not pretending?" Scarlett swallowed hard. This was the moment. She could keep lying, keep spinning the web she had wrapped around him for months. Or she could do the one thing she had sworn she never would: tell him the truth. A long silence stretched between them, charged and heavy. Finally, she exhaled. "I don't know." Ethan stilled. His smirk faded, his grip on her tightening just slightly. Not in anger, in recognition. The truth was an admission, a crack in the foundation. Scarlett was supposed to be untouchable, calculating, cold. A woman who had spent her life wearing masks. But now, she wasn't even sure which one was real anymore. Ethan exhaled, dragging his fingers along her jaw. Software. Dangerous. Controlled. "That's the first honest thing you've said," he murmured. Scarlett's breath shuddered. Ethan pulled back slightly, studying her with something unreadable in his gaze, like he was seeing her for the first time. She had played him, deceived him, lied to him. But now, standing here, under his scrutiny, under his touch, she wasn't sure who was controlling who anymore. Ethan's voice was lower now, almost a whisper. "We'll figure it out together." Scarlett's chest tightened, because for the first time in a long time, she wanted to believe him. Scarlett stood frozen, Ethan's words circling in her mind. "We'll figure it out together." He said it so easily, like it was that simple. Like their story wasn't built on lies, betrayal, and carefully hidden motives. Scarlett swallowed, forcing herself to keep breathing. Ethan was watching her, waiting. He had seen something in her just now, something real, and that was dangerous. She exhaled, stepping back just slightly, putting space between them. "You think this changes anything?" Ethan smirked, tilting his head. "You tell me." Scarlett clenched her jaw. She was slipping, and he knew it. She turned toward the edge of the balcony, gripping the stone railing, staring out at the ocean. The waves crashed violently below, a reminder of how quickly things could fall apart. "You hate me, Ethan," she said finally, her voice quieter now. "You're just too stubborn to admit it." Ethan exhaled, stepping beside her. "That's the thing, Scarlett. She turned her head slightly, just enough to see him watching her. Too close. Too intense. "I don't think I do," he admitted. Scarlett's breath hitched. No, this wasn't how this was supposed to go. She had prepared for his rage, his revenge, his cold, calculated moves. But not this. Not him looking at her like she was still his, like he still wanted her. She forced a smirk, tilting her chin. "Then maybe you should." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head slightly. "Maybe I should." Scarlett turned fully to face him, challenging him, testing him. "Then why don't you?" Ethan exhaled slowly. Then, without warning, he reached for her. His fingers curled around the back of her neck, his touch firm but controlled, his lips just inches from hers. She could feel his heartbeat, steady and strong. "You really want to know why?" he murmured. Scarlett swallowed hard, pulse racing. Ethan's grip tightened slightly. "Because no matter how many times I tell myself you're a liar, no matter how many ways I try to convince myself this was all a game to you." He exhaled, voice lower now. "I think I'm still yours." Scarlett's chest tightened. No, this wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to break him, not the other way around. Her lips parted, a protest forming. But Ethan was already closing the distance, and this time she didn't stop him. Because the worst part? She wasn't sure she wanted to. Scarlett's breath caught as Ethan's lips hovered just above hers. Too close, too tempting. She should have pulled away. Should have reminded herself that this was all a lie. Should have remembered that just days ago he had discovered the truth about her. But she didn't move. Ethan's fingers traced along the back of her neck, slow, deliberate. Not forceful, not demanding. Just waiting. Waiting for her to make a choice. Scarlett's pulse pounded. This wasn't part of the plan. She had built walls, worn masks, told lies so effortlessly that she had forgotten what the truth even felt like. But right now, this felt real. She exhaled, closing her eyes for half a second. A mistake. Because the moment her guard dropped, Ethan's lips finally met hers. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It was a slow, consuming fire. A war between two people who should have destroyed each other by now. Scarlett's fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer instead of pushing him away. Ethan groaned softly, his other hand sliding around her waist, holding her as if he wasn't willing to let go this time. God, what was she doing? She was supposed to be fighting him, supposed to be finding a way out. Instead, she was kissing him like she had never wanted anything more. Ethan's grip tightened, like he knew she was slipping, like he had been waiting for this exact moment. He pulled back just slightly, lips brushing against hers as he murmured, "There you are." Scarlett's chest ached, because she knew exactly what he meant. For once, she wasn't pretending. For once, this wasn't a game, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. Scarlett sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers gripping the sheets as if they could anchor her. What had she done? The taste of Ethan was still on her lips, the heat of his touch still burning against her skin. She had kissed him back, not out of strategy, not to manipulate, but because she wanted to. Her stomach twisted. This was a mistake. The sound of the balcony doors opening made her lift her gaze. Ethan stood there, hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. She inhaled slowly, forcing herself to steady her pulse. She had to take back control. "You think this changes anything?" she asked, voice sharper than she intended. Ethan smirked, stepping inside. "I think it already has." Scarlett clenched her jaw. Of course he thought he had won. She stood, smoothing her dress as she met his gaze head-on. It was just a kiss. Ethan chuckled, low and dark. Was it? Scarlett folded her arms. You're still going to hate me when this is over, Ethan. Ethan stepped closer, slow, deliberate, like he was hunting her. I don't think I hate you at all, he murmured. Scarlett swallowed hard. Then you should. Ethan tilted his head, watching her, reading her, seeing too much. Tell me something, Scarlett, he said smoothly. Why did you kiss me back? Her breath hitched. He was waiting for her to lie, to deny it. But she didn't. Instead, she met his gaze and whispered, I don't know. Ethan smirked, and that's when she realized she had just lost the upper hand. Because for the first time since this game had started, Scarlett Moreau was telling the truth. Scarlett should have walked away, should have said something sharp, something cold, anything to remind both of them what this was, but she didn't. Instead, she stood there, completely still, completely exposed, completely his. Ethan's smirk was slow, deliberate. He knew exactly what had just happened. She had given him the truth. Scarlett clenched her fists, forcing herself to breathe evenly. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Ethan tilted his head slightly. What's not to enjoy? Scarlett exhaled sharply, stepping back, needing space, needing to think. But Ethan didn't let her. He followed, slow and controlled, stopping just in front of her, watching every flicker of emotion she failed to mask. You don't have to pretend anymore, he murmured. Scarlett's pulse spiked. I'm not pretending. Ethan smirked, brushing his fingers along her jaw, just enough to send a shiver down her spine. Exactly, he whispered. Scarlett's breath caught. He was breaking her. Piece by piece, he was dismantling every carefully built lie, forcing her to face the truth she had spent so long burying. This wasn't just a game anymore, and that terrified her more than anything. She needed to stop this. Now she forced a smirk, tilting her chin up. So what's next, Ethan? Ethan studied her, his expression unreadable. That depends. Scarlett arched a brow. On what? Ethan exhaled slowly. On whether you want to keep running or finally admit what we both know. Scarlett's stomach twisted, because she already knew the answer. She just wasn't ready to say it. Not yet. Scarlett felt the weight of Ethan's words settle in the space between them. On whether you want to keep running or finally admit what we both know. Her stomach twisted. There was no escape. She had spent her entire life running, slipping in and out of identities like second skin, bending truths until they shattered. But Ethan wasn't letting her run this time. Scarlett forced a smirk. You're awfully confident. Ethan chuckled, low and knowing. I have a reason to be. Scarlett exhaled, turning away, walking toward the large windows. The ocean stretched out before her, endless and wild. So much freedom, so much space, and yet she had never felt more trapped. She heard Ethan's footsteps behind her. Slow, measured, inescapable. You're not going to let this go, are you? She murmured. Ethan stopped just behind her, his warmth pressing against her back. Not when I'm this close to the truth. Scarlett clenched her jaw. He wanted her to admit it, that it had never been just a lie, that the months of stolen moments, whispered conversations, and lingering touches hadn't all been calculated, that somewhere along the way, she had stopped pretending. Ethan's voice was softer now. Tell me, Scarlett. She swallowed hard. She had two choices. She could keep up the act, push him away, and end this before it was too late. Or she could tell him the truth. She turned slightly, meeting his gaze, her heart pounding. Ethan's blue eyes burned into hers, waiting. And finally, Scarlett exhaled and whispered, "I don't want to run anymore." Ethan didn't move, didn't speak, but his grip on her wrist tightened just slightly, his chest rising and falling with measured breaths. Scarlett felt the shift between them, the air thick with something heavier than deception, something real. And this time, she didn't fight it. She let it consume her. Scarlett's words hung between them, heavy and unshakable. "I don't want to run anymore." Ethan's grip on her wrist didn't loosen. If anything, it tightened. Not in anger, not in possession, but in something far more dangerous: understanding. Scarlett swallowed, resisting the urge to pull away. This wasn't part of the plan. She had been trained to deceive, to manipulate emotions without ever letting herself feel them. But now? Now she wasn't sure where the lie ended and where the truth began. Ethan exhaled slowly, his free hand lifting to tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was careful, like he was afraid she might disappear if he wasn't gentle enough. "You mean that?" he murmured. Scarlett's heart pounded. Yes, number maybe. She had spent so long lying that she didn't even know if she was capable of telling the truth anymore. But when she met Ethan's gaze, steady, sharp, waiting for the final piece to fall into place, she knew. Yes. A single word, barely audible, but Ethan heard it, and it changed everything. His fingers tightened around her wrist before sliding down, tracing the inside of her palm before intertwining their fingers together. Scarlett should have pulled away. Instead, she let him hold on. "Then stop looking for the exit," Ethan murmured, stepping closer. "There isn't one." Scarlett swallowed hard. He wasn't wrong. She had built an empire of lies around this man, but somewhere along the way, she had become trapped inside it too. Her lips parted, a protest forming, but Ethan was already closing the distance. His lips met hers, slow but deliberate. Not a battle, not a test, just an undeniable truth. And for the first time, Scarlett didn't question it, didn't fight it, didn't run. Because maybe, just maybe, this was the only thing that had ever been real. Scarlett's breath shuddered as Ethan's lips moved against hers, slow and deliberate. Not a demand, not a test, just real. And that terrified her. Because this wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to stay in control, supposed to keep him at arm's length until she found a way out. But there was no way out. Not anymore. Ethan's fingers slid down her back, pulling her closer, as if he could feel the war raging inside her, as if he was daring her to make a choice. Scarlett hesitated, just for a second. Then she kissed him back. And just like that, she knew she had lost. Ethan exhaled sharply against her lips, his grip tightening, like he had been waiting for this moment. Like he had been waiting for her to surrender. Scarlett's fingers curled into his shirt, not to push him away, but to hold on. Because for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to run anymore. The realization hit her like a knife to the ribs. What had she done? She pulled away abruptly, stepping back, her breath uneven. Ethan didn't move, didn't reach for her. He just watched, his blue eyes unreadable. Scarlett clenched her fists. She had to fix this. She had to regain control. "This doesn't change anything," she whispered. Ethan exhaled, tilting his head slightly. "Doesn't it?" Scarlett's pulse pounded. She had no answer. because for the first time she wasn't sure what was real anymore. And Ethan? He knew it. Scarlett turned away, forcing her breathing to steady. This couldn't be happening. Her entire life had been built on deception, on knowing exactly what move to make next. But Ethan was undoing her, piece by piece. And the worst part? She was letting him. Ethan exhaled slowly, his voice smooth but laced with something darker. You can't pretend this didn't happen, Scarlett. She swallowed hard, keeping her back to him. I don't have to pretend. Ethan chuckled, low and knowing. Because you're still lying to yourself? Scarlett clenched her jaw. She had to shut this down, had to regain control before it was too late. She turned back to him, crossing her arms. Let's say I admit it. Let's say I tell you everything you want to hear. Ethan smirked. Go on. Scarlett narrowed her eyes. Then what? Ethan's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. That depends. Scarlett tilted her head. On? Ethan took a step closer, slow and deliberate, his voice dropping lower. On whether you're ready to stop running. Scarlett inhaled sharply. That was the problem, wasn't it? For so long she had been running. From him, from herself, from whatever this thing between them had become. She had spent months weaving a perfect lie. But now? Now she wasn't sure if she wanted to escape it. Ethan stepped closer still, his fingers brushing against her wrist. Scarlett. Her stomach twisted. He was giving her a choice. But did she even have one anymore? She swallowed hard. You want the truth? Ethan didn't blink. Always. Scarlett exhaled, her pulse hammering, and then, before she could stop herself, she finally said it. I don't want to leave. The moment the words left her lips, Ethan's smirk vanished. Because for the first time since this game began, Scarlett wasn't lying. Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, watching her, his smirk gone, replaced with something heavier, something real. Scarlett's pulse thundered in her ears. She had said it. She had admitted the one thing she swore she never would. I don't want to leave. Ethan inhaled slowly, his fingers brushing against hers, like he was testing the weight of her words. Finally, he exhaled. Say it again. Scarlett clenched her jaw. Why? Ethan smirked, but there was no amusement in it. Because I want to believe you. Scarlett swallowed. That was the problem, wasn't it? She had spent so much time lying that even when she told the truth, it still sounded like a game. She took a step back, needing space. It doesn't matter. Ethan's gaze darkened. It does. Scarlett exhaled, pressing her fingers to her temples. She couldn't do this. Couldn't stand here and pretend that the past didn't exist, that their entire relationship hadn't started with deception. Even if she wanted to stop running, it didn't erase the fact that she had betrayed him. She turned toward the window, staring at the endless stretch of ocean. This doesn't change anything, Ethan. Ethan let out a quiet laugh. You keep saying that. Scarlett closed her eyes, gripping the railing. Because it's true. Ethan moved behind her, his hands settling on the railing beside hers, not touching, not trapping, just there. You're scared, he murmured. Scarlett stiffened. Ethan exhaled, his voice softer now. You don't know what happens next. Scarlett's throat tightened. He was right. She had spent her life knowing exactly how every move would play out. But now she had no idea. Ethan leaned in slightly, his breath warm against her skin. For once, Scarlett, stop trying to control everything. Scarlett turned slowly, her gaze locking onto his. Ethan's blue eyes burned into hers, steady, certain, waiting. Scarlett swallowed, and then, for the first time, she let go. She lifted her chin, her voice quiet but unshakable. "I don't want to leave." Ethan exhaled, and then he kissed her. Not in anger, not in control, but like a man who had finally won the only battle that mattered. Scarlett's fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer instead of pushing him away. Because maybe, just maybe, she had been waiting to lose this fight all along. Scarlett didn't know when she stopped thinking. One moment, she had been fighting. Fighting him, fighting herself, fighting the inevitable. The next, she was lost. Ethan's kiss was slow, deep, not a demand, but a declaration, and she let him have it. Her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer, like she needed to feel something real, like she needed him. Ethan groaned softly against her lips, his grip tightening at her waist. Not in control, not in anger, just needing. Scarlett should have been terrified, but for the first time in months, she wasn't running. Ethan pulled back slightly, his breath warm against her skin. His smirk was gone. His armor was gone. His blue eyes burned into hers. "You should have told me sooner." Scarlett swallowed hard, her hands still gripping his shirt. "I didn't know how." Ethan exhaled slowly, dragging his thumb along her cheek, like he was memorizing her. "I would have fought for you." Scarlett's chest ached, because that was the cruelest part of all, wasn't it? This whole time, she had been playing a game she never had to play. Because if she had just told the truth, maybe Ethan would have chosen her anyway. Her throat tightened. "It's too late, isn't it?" Ethan's gaze darkened. Before he could answer, the sound of a phone vibrating cut through the silence. Scarlett stiffened. Ethan sighed, stepping back, pulling his phone from his pocket. His jaw clenched instantly. Scarlett knew that look. Danger. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his jaw. Whatever he had just read, he didn't like it. Scarlett's pulse spiked. "Ethan?" His eyes flickered to her, something unreadable in them. Then he locked his phone, sliding it into his pocket. And just like that, the moment was gone. Scarlett inhaled, forcing her voice steady. "Who was it?" Ethan smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing important." Liar. Scarlett studied him, her stomach twisting, because she had seen that smirk before. It was the same one she had worn every time she told a lie. And now, Ethan was the one keeping secrets. Scarlett watched as Ethan slipped his phone back into his pocket, his smirk carefully placed. Too careful, too controlled. It was a lie. She had spent her entire life perfecting deception, knowing exactly when someone was hiding something. And right now, Ethan Calloway was hiding something. Scarlett exhaled, keeping her voice light. "You sure that wasn't important?" Ethan leaned against the bar, pouring himself a drink. "Nothing that can't wait." Scarlett tilted her head. "Strange. You never let business wait." Ethan's smirk twitched, but he covered it with a sip of whiskey. "Some things are more important." Scarlett's stomach twisted. He was avoiding something, and she hated how much that bothered her. She forced a smirk, stepping closer. "You're lying to me." Ethan raised a brow, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Says the woman who built an entire relationship on lies?" Scarlett exhaled, fingers curling at her sides. "That's not an answer." Ethan watched her carefully, his smirk fading just slightly. "Let it go, Scarlett." Scarlett's pulse spiked. Because that was the real answer. She had spent months lying to him, hiding the truth, twisting the game in her favor. And now, the roles had shifted. Now, Ethan was the one keeping secrets. Scarlett's jaw tightened. Was this his revenge? His way of making her feel the way he had felt? Ethan set his glass down, stepping closer, his presence overwhelming. I'm giving you a choice. Scarlett swallowed hard. A choice? Ethan exhaled, tilting his head. Walk away from this conversation. Don't ask me again. Scarlett clenched her fists. He was challenging her. The man who had spent weeks tearing apart her lies was now daring her to trust him. Scarlett studied his face, searching for something. A crack, a flicker of hesitation. Anything. She found nothing. For the first time, she didn't know if she could win this game, and that terrified her more than anything. Scarlett's heart pounded, but she didn't move. Ethan was standing in front of her, his expression unreadable, his words still hanging between them. Walk away from this conversation. Don't ask me again. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plea. It was a test. For once, Ethan wasn't the one chasing the truth. He was waiting to see if she would. Scarlett exhaled slowly, choosing her next words carefully. Is this what we've become? Ethan's smirk didn't return. And what exactly is that? Scarlett swallowed. Liars. Ethan tilted his head slightly, stepping even closer. Too close. We were always liars, Scarlett. The only difference now is, I'm better at it than you. Scarlett's stomach twisted, because she knew he was right. For months she had been in control. She had dictated the pace, spun the web, played him like a piece on a chessboard. But now, Ethan was the one making the final move. Scarlett clenched her jaw. You want me to trust you? Ethan exhaled, his voice lower now. I want you to choose. Scarlett swallowed. Choose what? Ethan's gaze darkened. Whether this is real or just another lie. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Scarlett had spent her entire life calculating the right move, knowing exactly how every game would end. But for the first time, she didn't know what came next. Because if she chose to trust him, there was no turning back. Ethan studied her, waiting, his patience unshakable, and Scarlett realized this wasn't a game anymore. She exhaled. Okay? Ethan frowned slightly. Okay? Scarlett met his gaze, steady and unflinching. Okay, no more running. Ethan didn't move for a second. Then, he reached for her. His fingers curled around her wrist, sliding up to tangle with hers, his grip warm, steady. Then stay, he murmured. Scarlett's chest tightened. This was it. Her choice. And for the first time in her life, she didn't hesitate. Scarlett stepped closer, pressing her forehead against his. I'm not going anywhere. Ethan exhaled, his grip tightening. Good. Scarlett closed her eyes, her pulse steadying, because for the first time in a long, long time, she wasn't pretending anymore.